What's going on, guys? My name is Stefan. This is my good friend Trevor Burris, and we are the second best realtors on the internet. What's going on? How's your day?
Oh man, it's good so far. Girls are off school today. It's election day.
It is election day.
By the way, hopefully we get this out to you by election day.
Yep.
Yeah, girls are off school, hanging out at home. I've been running around simultaneously trying to get here, and then also make sure nobody kills themselves.
Yep.
You know, and as at home as it goes with 3 kids.
It's good.
But yeah, this last week's been a busy one. Lots of good stuff happening. Obviously, it's just been, a ton of conversation about the election. I know you're probably having that. A ton of conversations about how that affects the market and just where we're going. And so it's been a really interesting week. What about you?
Yeah. No, it's been a good week. We did some landscaping this last weekend, helped out a friend, and that was really fun. I mean, there's something about like a before and after when you're like ripping up bushes and putting in new plants and mulch.
Isn't fall like the best time for landscaping?
It is. Yeah, because when you do it in like the summer months, it's just like 90 degrees, humid, sun's beating down.
Awful.
It makes digging holes and planting 10 times different from different seasons.
Yeah.
So I really enjoyed that. That was
That's
fun.
good.
That was like my highlight, I'd say.
Yeah. We're in a new place today.
Yeah.
Because we're avoiding the construction.
Yep.
So we found a different room that's
Yep.
a little quieter. Hopefully this helps out. But we want to dig into some fun topics today. I think that that will be relevant to everybody that's listening. That will help I guess people grapple with like decisions right now.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about the election season, which is all about decisions, but we obviously want to bring that down to like where we're at, in relating to people and helping them make the right decisions for their financial future, for their investment future, for the ways that they're buying and selling real estate and those things that matter to us. But we want to do it in a little bit of a different light. And then maybe the first best realtors, not to point a finger at anybody, but just saying there's some folks out there that really want to convince you now is the right time no matter what. They are salesmen at heart. They're closing the deal. This is their job, right? This is what they want to do, is get the deal closed because they want to have that reel at the end of the month that shows all their closings, right? And how much volume they got each month. And as the second best realtors, that's not the way that we do it.
Right.
Yeah,
and I think it's just a fine line of like, it's finding the people that it's okay to be like. There are some great realtors out there, great realtors that we would have on second best realtors, right?
Yeah,
that are,
put them on.
Putting the people first and making sure that they're getting their best deal, and then they're also posting pictures. So it's not, we're just not outing the people that just post about their.
No, I post pictures.
Yeah.
Confession.
I post pictures. we all post pictures, but it is something to note of just like why you came to me and said like, let's start this podcast. Let's talk about what values we have and why we want to name it the second best realtors. There's a punny kind of fun, ness about it. But like, I think what's good to like tell the listeners again, just kind of hone in on what that means, what that means to us, what that means to you. So if you want to just touch on that real quick, like what does the name the second best realtors mean?
Yeah. The purpose is to be funny, right? And that we don't want to be seen as the best out there because we're both growing in our business, because we're both not perfect. We don't want people to see us as perfect. We want people to see us as people that are learning, that are growing, that are shaping. But outside of that, we also want people to see that we're not the ones putting ourselves first when we serve people in transactions. We're actually putting the relationship first. We're putting the client who should be in the driver's seat, who has the right to make the right decisions. We're putting them first by giving them the best information we can possibly give them to help them make the right decision for their lives, right? And a lot of times, in my experience, I've found I have a lot of opportunities to put myself first in this industry. And nobody's going to sue me over it. Nobody's going to stop me. I'm just doing what's right for me. I can do those things, or I can choose to be second best.
Yeah.
Which means it might hurt me.
Yeah.
but it might benefit my client.
Yeah.
And so to me, second best means you're making those choices to make yourself second best and raising up your clients to be first best. And that's why we want to be the second best.
Right. I think there's, I mean, that's 100%. You nailed it. I mean, I think it's cool because being a real estate agent it's your own business. And so like, you take the hits. It's very different than a commission job where it's like you're in a sales position where it's like you're part of a business where you're kind of tied into having to make those calls, even though like deep down your moral compass is like, this person doesn't really need it, but like, I don't want to lose my job. I have to do this. Yeah. Where it has a somewhat similar light in real estate, but at the end of the day, we choose the work that we want to do no matter what. And I think that's where it comes back to, again, our faith piece of like, okay, this is what's right for this person. Like, I might be taking the hit, but in the long run, like, this is what I believe is what is right for this person, and I want to like shine that light onto them.
Yeah.
So I think that part's really cool.
Yeah.
And
there's a guiding moral principle behind it, right? That we choose to care for others, love others as much as we love ourselves, right? That's a biblical principle that we both believe in, but I think it's even become a cultural principle in that if you want others to treat you well, then you need to treat them well first.
Right.
But that does come at a cost, right? You can't treat someone just as well as you want to be treated yourself without losing something, right? And so in our mindsets, we're okay to take the short loss. We're okay to be second best because that benefits that client. And then our hope is then that would increase our value in the future, that would increase the trust level that people give us. It would only benefit us down the road. It's a long game principle, right? But we're also looking at it like this is the best game because then I actually get to care for people. I get to stay in relationship with them. I don't burn through relationships in the process.
Yeah.
And that's something I've really grown to love about this business, and something you're learning as you get into it, and you're taking swings and you're helping folks and all that. And so, so long introduction, but that's kind of what we wanted to talk about today. Was getting into the nitty-gritty of like, okay, this is our current market situation. How are we stewarding this principle in our relationships? Like, how are we caring for these things? And I want to start off with a story. I hope that's okay.
Yeah, go for it.
Something literally happened yesterday. Client reaches out to me, and it's those texts that you get that's just like, let's just send a house. It's just a link, realtor.com, Zillow.com. Here's the link. And I'm like, oh shoot, like they're interested. Like they would not send this to me unless they wanted some feedback and unless they're really thinking about stepping forward. And so I said, hey, let's get on a call. Let's talk about it, right? And so start up this conversation, and I'm like, that's a beautiful house. Like, what are you thinking? Like, do you want to purchase this and keep your other house and rent it? Do you want to sell your other house and all this? Because a lot of those factors is what weighs into how we serve people, right? I could say, my realtor hat goes on, my business hat goes on and goes, this could be 2 sales for me, back to back, bam, bam. That's a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
I could go that way really fast and try to angle the conversation towards that end. And it's tempting, I'm not gonna lie. Like, it's very tempting to just go, I need to convince them to sell right now, and I need to convince them to buy this house. I've been in a relationship with these people for years. I've helped them buy 2 houses. I've helped them turn one into an investment property. The plan was to turn the second one into an investment property as well. And so I'm thinking about the depth of this relationship, right? That goes back, that these guys trust me. They keep coming back to me because they know I'm looking out for their interests. And I said, so what are you thinking about doing? And they said, well, the plan is probably to sell our house and then to buy this other house. How do we do that? And I'm like, great, let me give you all the information I can to help you with this decision. So I walk them through different scenarios. One of those, just in brevity, is like you can offer contingent on a house, but you haven't listed your house yet. So you're making an offer that is contingent upon you selling, but then that seller is going to know they haven't listed it yet, so it's a pretty scary contingency. Or you find a way to purchase this house without selling first, right? You basically say, hey, I'm non-contingent, but maybe you're able to support the new purchase with like an equity line or something like that. And so that was kind of option 2. And I said option 3, which is really the hardest, but it's the safest, is that you just sell the house. You get out from underneath it, and then you go shopping. So maybe you're renting for a little while or something, staying with family, friends, but you're free and clear of that investment. You don't have a mortgage over your head, and you've got all the cash you need in order to jump on this purchase. So I said, here's your 3 options. And then they're like, well, what do you think is best? And this is where the consultation starts to be something where you got to lay yourself down a little bit and say, here's what's going on. And I was really honest with them. I said, guys, honestly, I'm looking at your neighborhood right now. I'm looking at the data. It's important that anytime I give an opinion, I'm not just expressing an opinion. It's just not just like, I think it's a bad time to sell. I think it's a bad time to buy. Well, why? Well, then I need to have something to show them that says, here's the data. And the data I gave them was straight out of their neighborhood. I had 7 comps in front of me. That's what we call comparable properties, things that have sold, that are pending, or that are currently actively listed. And I'm looking at all this data and I'm going, here's what I see. 4 of these sold like 3 months ago, and they sold quick, bam, fast, and maybe 2 weeks max or something like that. And they sold for maybe slightly under the prices they were listed, but they sold really well. They didn't lose a lot of value there. They sold quick. Then I see 3 properties that have been sitting on the market for 3 months minimum. That all kicked off like a month or 2 ago. And I said, guys, I need you to see this trend that I see. A couple of months ago is when the Fed hit the button and the rates came down, and everybody jumped in and thought, okay, I've got to get things sold. I've got to move quickly at this opportunity. Now the rates have trended back up. We're almost back up where we were before the Fed even hit the button. And so that 0.5 interest rate drop has now been completely erased. The sentiment has gone in reverse. Like now we're going up. And I said, so the market has dried up. Nobody's looking anymore. And you can tell by these 3 listings that are exactly the same as those other ones that just sold, but they've been sitting there for months. And I said, if you guys want to go and pop on a resale today to purchase, that's really scary with what might happen to your listing. And so I was just honest, and I said, I don't think this is a good time. Unless you're willing to lose a lot of equity in the process, I think it would be safer for you to wait. And they need that equity in order to make that down payment. Like, I know their financial situation. I know it well. And I know they would need to have as much as possible to offset the crazy high interest rates, because I think they took like a 3-something in their last house. So it's a 7% interest rate we're talking about now. And they're going to have to increase the value of the house they're purchasing, like all these things. And they're going to have less equity to pay. So I was just honest. I said, I think we need to wait. I don't think it's going to work out like you want it to right now.
Yeah.
So that was a very recent situation where I just had to say, I have an opportunity to sell myself and get these deals closed, but it may end up hurting them. And instead, I was really honest, and I said, this is the way this could hurt you, and this is the way to make the right decision, in my opinion. And I just gave them my opinion. And I think they agree with it. And we're probably going to delay and wait. And they don't need to move right away. So that's one situation I can think of selling, for instance. And that's kind of both sides of the coin. But I was thinking maybe we talk about both sides today, so people can see like why in this current market selling may be necessary, or it may be unnecessary, or buying may be necessary, or it may be unnecessary. So can you think of any other selling situations you've heard of recently?
I mean, that was a good one. I mean, I feel like what you did there was just you laid out all the facts, and then like you said, you still gave your opinion, but you didn't give your opinion about the facts. Like the facts were, give it to them, then they ask for your opinion. You say what you think as you're an expert in this, and then it's up to them to make the decision. But I think you did a really good job just kind of showing them that you're there for them, and that's at the end of the day what's most important. I mean, I feel like for me, I've had a couple conversations with people that want to list their home, and a lot of it has just been, I want to wait till the new year. I want to wait until the spring, which, it sparks more conversation of like, yes, like when you look at the data, like September, the fall months, things do sit on the market longer. There are price drops that happen, and so like talking to people and educating people to let them understand like when is the hot time to sell, but there's always a caveat is everybody has their own timeline of what they need at what time, do they need to move for family member, a kid? I mean, at like that point, like price doesn't, like things don't matter. And so like that's where it comes down to, like, let's have a conversation, let's sit down, let's have coffee. Let me talk about like what is the circumstance that's at play that is causing you to want to sell. And then that sparks conversations where it's, you know, we can talk data, we can talk about, you know, September. I think what was cool is the TAR report that just came out. I think it's, what's his name, Stacy Anderson. Yeah, I think it was really, really interesting because I feel like the overall looming conversation is like, oh my gosh, the world is falling apart, which like it's so easy to place a stamp on like what is happening. And I think it's just individual, like each person has its own individual circumstance. And so I think like when you look at the stats, it's like, okay, yeah, like days on market are increasing a little bit per house. But when you look at the last 10 years, it's very consistent to what Septembers have been, you know, what falls have been in the past.
Yeah, there's a lot of inflammatory language going around, right? But then you look at the trends and it's like, wait, we're not off the mark at all for like current trends and trends over the last, you know, several decades. It's like, this is exactly what always happens.
Right.
Like this isn't unpredicted, even though we have different interest rates and different political climate and all these different things that people say are causing issues. It's not different.
Right. And I guess a good question that maybe you can answer is when you're set with that conversation with the client that's like, hey, like these are the stats, like how my house is going to stay on the market forever. Like look at what's happening the last couple of years. Like, how do you address that? Like, obviously you can reference this data range or these stats, like, which I think, you know, again, facts don't care about your feelings kind of thing. Like facts are truth. But at the same time, like they're still a person, they still want to sell their home fast. And what does that conversation look like when you have to have that conversation?
Yeah, absolutely. And I've absolutely had that conversation recently. And it's one of those things where when the market shifts dramatically, like it typically does in the fall, you run into a whole different strategy that you're not typically playing with. In our market, at least over the last 10 years, our market has felt like this, you put it out there no matter what shape, and there's eventually going to be a buyer, and they're probably going to give you at asking minimum. Well, now we're starting to see that trend down a little bit. It's calming down significantly. It's kind of getting back to those like pre-2008 levels in which things were just consistent. They weren't crazy, but they were just like slow you go. Like if things are valued too high, nobody's going to buy it. They're going to wait until it comes down and gets into their range. And so I've been telling sellers the strategy shifts. You have to go from, hey, how do I get the most possible amount, to how do I compete with the current market that's out there and get the most I can and attract as many buyers as I can towards me so that I beat out the competition that's on the market. It's like you go from thinking I have high buyer competition to now I have high seller competition because the inventory is rising. There's more and more listings out there, and some of them are just hanging out and trying to get their high dollar, and they're not lowering price. So now you're competing with them.
Yep.
You change this into, oh shoot, I thought because my neighbor sold down the street 6 months ago, which is the conversation you have with every single seller, for this much, I could get way up there. And it's like, well, I need you to zero into what's happening right now. Like what is currently happening in your market. And like, for instance, in that neighborhood I looked at yesterday, there were 3 houses that were sitting on the market. All were overpriced. One of them that had been sitting for the longest had dropped down so low that it was below what the others had sold for just a few months ago. And they had to walk it down because they were chasing the market from the others, right? They're trying to get, how do I get to the lowest value so that someone will buy mine before they buy these?
Yeah.
Because these are my competition. And so it really comes down to, can you put the most enticing price out there? Can you put the most enticing value out there for whoever buyers are looking? Because there's not a lot. But if there are enough buyers, right? There's still a high demand for housing that if you put the most enticing thing out there, then it's going to draw buyers towards you, and eventually you'll get offers, maybe multiple offers that will then boost that value back up to where you want it to be. So totally different strategy than we're used to, but that's where we're at right now.
Yeah.
In this like November, first part of November market of 2024, it's like, okay, now we might be chasing the competition to see who can get lowest to get the deal done, right?
Yeah. What does it look like for like you as an agent kind of going to the second best realtors, right? Like when something is sitting on the market like that, how do you show your compassion for them when it's like, hey, this isn't selling, this isn't doing what I want it to? I think it's I've been able to see it from you, I've been able to see it from Sandy, Bryant, everyone at this firm. It's like, how do you comfort the listing or the sellers when, you know, things might not be going their way? I think it's very common for, you know, the agent to come in and do their job and not really care, like sell the house, right? They're going to sell the house. Every agent knows how to do that. You're going to sell the house. But I think it's been cool to see like how you guys have interacted with the clients and like the check-ins, that like, hey, like this is what I'm doing to help you out. So like what is something that you've used as like a consistent tactic for like, hey, let me just like calm the waters here. Everything's gonna be okay. Like, do you like give them facts? Do you just like have them sit down for another conversation? Just say like, hey, like it's okay. Like, it's okay. Like, what does that look like?
My number one guiding principle is communication is care. It's like, if you're not communicating regularly, if you're letting them reach out to you and freak out, then you've not done your job correctly, right? You need to get ahead of that communication ball and be like, how do I best translate that I'm doing everything I can, that this is where the market's going? Like, how do I keep dropping those nuggets and those helpful like tips and those helpful insights? And honestly, when you've done all the communication you can, then it's just a matter of telling them, hey, this is your house, this is your investment, you're in control. And so I don't want to make any decisions for you. I'm giving you my opinion as to where I think we should go. And eventually, like I'm finding this with the current listing, eventually my opinion is going to shift from, hey, we should just make another price drop. Because I think that's the easiest thing for a real estate agent to say, is like, let's just keep lowering the price. When your clients, the sellers, may be going, I can't do that.
Right.
Like, I'm going underwater if I do that. I can't, like, it's not, which, you know, nobody's selling for underwater unless they bought like last year and they're just having to sell for less than what they bought for because the market hasn't picked up fast enough. But most people still have equity. They're still walking away with something, but a lot of them are going, hey, this is what I've invested into the property already. This is what it will hurt me if I let go of anything less than that. When we're getting to that point, an agent can just keep saying, drop the price, doesn't matter, drop the price. Or they can say, you know what, guys, maybe the smart thing to do is to pull this thing off the market and bring it back in a market that actually will digest your listing. Because I've got a theory for some listings right now that if they're just not producing, maybe they need some updates, or they're just not, like the market that they're in is just not performing well, then I think that could flip pretty dramatically next year if interest rates came down more significantly. And so it's kind of like, okay, let's not play the game of sacrificing $30,000 to $40,000 of equity. Why don't we just table it and wait until that equity comes back into the picture?
Yeah.
Because it's all about sentiment. We talk about this a lot, you know. If the market sentiment right now is, that's not worth it to me. Well, what if the market sentiment shifts so quickly like it has so many times over this last couple of years? The spring market hits next year, things go crazy, competition heats up, and then they stick it back in the market. Like, nobody's going to remember when they dropped the price 6 months ago.
Yeah.
But they will remember that there's a new listing right there, and it's one of the few listings they can grab because everything's flying like hotcakes, and they're going to compete for it. And what happens if that equals 30 to 40 grand higher for them in just 6 months' time? And so I like to always put myself in their shoes and go, how can I help you get the best return on your home? And if that means not selling right now, good. Like, let's make that decision, because I don't want them eating that much equity when it's just bad timing, which is kind of what I feel like a lot of listings in the market are bumping into right now. It's just bad timing.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it's a crazy time.
It's weird. It's weird, and I hate that it shifted on such a dime. Like that example I mentioned before, I also brought this up. Well, it was a couple of days before that, so it wasn't the same example, but I brought up the same like type of trend with this other client, and he was looking at it from the perspective of, I just need to know how much my house is worth. Like, if it's down in value right now, would it appraise there so I can get this equity line? because then I want to purchase an investment. I want to get into like the investor game. So he's thinking like purchase, like how much is my value so that I can turn that into purchase power.
Yeah.
And I had to explain to him like, okay, well, you've got two things going against you here, right? You've got the market is just much slower than it was even just a few months ago, which is not going to help your equity at all. Like appraisals will be based on sales that are closest to you, and probably those sales are suffering just like a lot of others. Maybe not. Maybe it's a different area and that's different, but we'll look at that more specifically. But then I had to advise him, but if you want to purchase right now, if you're looking at an investment, if you're looking at a flip, which is kind of what he's playing with the idea of, you could be capitalizing that 30 to 40 grand that I just talked about immediately, like really quickly.
Yeah.
You pay for a house that could use just a couple of cosmetic updates, and then a few months later, when the market skips up again and starts heading for the moon, then it's like you're the one that benefits from all that equity.
Mm-hmm.
And that brings a different perspective because buyers are like, wait, so now is a good time to buy? Even though the market's really slow? And I'm like, have you seen these deals out there?
Yeah.
I'm pitching, Love It Property stuff. I'm like, hey, there's listings that we've been struggling to get sold. These are great opportunities. Our sellers really need to sell, and you would benefit so quickly from those opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And so there's ways to make great deals right now if you want to get into the purchase game. Now that does mean you're going to have to swallow higher costs, right? That's not going to be equal. You're going to take a much higher interest rate, but ultimately the equity is the name of the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
In this market, if you're buying in a time when the equity is low and it's not increasing or it's flatlined or maybe even slightly reversing, that's the perfect time to get into the purchase game because our market is on its way up quick in the future, and you'll be the one that benefits from that.
Yeah, and I think, equity is exactly, the name of the game, what people want to get when they're selling their home. And I think it's funny because I had this conversation this last weekend with a buddy of mine that's looking to invest. And, I was like, hey, like if you're looking for something that you really want and you want to get a good price on it, now is a good time to buy. Mm-hmm. And he kind of just laughed. He said, well, interest rates are so high. You're saying that because you're a real estate agent, like as a joke, but like also there's like some seriousness to it. And it's like, well, just like what you said, it's like there's a hit that you take with the monthly payments at the beginning.
Yeah.
But when you look at try to look to the future, and we never know, we never can predict the future. But with what the Fed's going to try to do, bringing rates down, and I know Fed rates don't totally correlate, but whatever, mortgage bonds, whatever it is. But I think it's important to educate and say hey, if you're trying to invest and gain equity from this property, you can pick and choose right now because there are a lot of listings, like you said, that are sitting on the market that sellers are just wanting to sell and get a little bit above what the bottom line is. Yep. So I think that I'm seeing just a lot of low balls being thrown out there that maybe even won't be taken, but sometimes there's the rebuttal where it's like, hey, we can't accept that, but you give me something a little bit more reasonable, and it's like you still throw something lower, and all of a sudden the buyer's getting what they want for a lower purchase price. Yeah. Even though interest rates are a little high, they can refinance later. Yeah. And I think that going to the sentiment of second best realtors, it's like that on the outside, if you don't educate them well enough, it's like, they're just trying to be real estate agent, trying to sell a home and screw the buyer over. But it's the exact opposite. It's like, no, you don't see, I want to educate you. And I think that's where it's important for us to sit down and say hey, this is why I'm telling you to buy now. It's not just you need to buy now. Let's look. It's spending that time to say this is your end goal is this. This is how we're gonna get there. These are the facts that make it there.
The education behind this is really complex, right? It's not just a matter of hey, this is the data. We have a 3-month supply on our hands now, and therefore we have more supply than we've had in a long time. And so that means, less competition. That means easier way to get under contract on stuff. Probably an easier way to get a low ball accepted. And so all those mindsets are something that's stirring in buyers' minds. But then they're also thinking, but I have to take an 8% interest rate. if I do an investment loan, you know?
Yeah.
Can I even afford that?
Yeah.
You know, I'm not going to be able to rent it for that much once I take 8% because I don't have more than 20% down to put on it, you know? And so it's like those factors are in conflict with each other. And people tend to think about the monthly game because that's how our culture like works, right? We're thinking about how much am I making this month? How much can I spend? How much can I buy for myself? Like all those kind of things. Whereas the long-term game is what you have to think about in real estate. Mm-hmm. You can't just swallow the short-term losses or just accept the short-term losses as your total like reasoning for why you should purchase or why you shouldn't. You have to think about, wow, okay, so if the interest rates drop 2% next year, I could refinance. What would my payment be then? And how much less will I have paid for the house then? Mm-hmm. It's all speculative, right? We don't really know where it's going, but we do know the trend is probably down, right? Mm-hmm. That's economists, people way smarter than us are saying this kind of stuff. And so we're just leaning into the predictions of the market where they think it's going. And yet, if you take that risk, which you only want to do if you can afford it, right? Don't do it so it's just way outside of your means. But if you can afford it, maybe you're taking a little bit of a loss up front, but then over time you end up going way into the green because you took that early investment versus what other people did, then now you've got a fantastic investment on your hands. And this works both for not just for investors, but home buyers too. Mm-hmm. They're thinking, well, okay, I want to buy right now, specifically first-time home buyers. I want to buy right now. But these interest rates are crazy. My mortgage is going to be $3,000 a month. I've only ever paid $1,200 in rent. It's like, okay, I hear you. Tell me if you can afford it. Well, yeah, I can totally afford it. You know, if I just cut down here and I don't, you know, have all these like subscriptions and stuff like that, then yeah, like I can do that for a long time. I've got plenty in savings. Mm-hmm. Like I can pull it off. And I'm like, okay, now let's talk about what it looks like a year from now. Mm-hmm. When that thing reverses, now you've got $100,000 in equity because the market just went, pew, you know, interest rates came down. How are you feeling about your investment now? Yeah. And they're almost always going to look at me and go, oh, I see. I see what you're saying. I see that there's a massive upside to this that maybe is a short-term loss, you know? Mm-hmm. And that's what's hard to help people grab. And we have to do it carefully because we don't want to push people past their risk tolerance. Right. I've worked with sellers. I didn't help them buy, but I've worked with sellers that purchased a house when interest rates were high because someone talked them into it. And now a year or two later, they're going, I need to sell because I can't afford it. Yeah. It hasn't changed. It's gone up, if anything. I can't refinance and I can't do anything. Mm-hmm. And those are really sad stories because it's like someone did not tell them they needed to buy within their means. Someone did not tell them only take a risk if you can absolutely afford it, the worst case scenario.
Yeah. I mean, it's you can't, like you said, you cannot predict the future. We've got data. We've got all that we can from the past, but it doesn't mean that is exactly what's going to happen in the future. And I mean, those stories are sad. I mean, like, I know plenty of people that have been in homes for just like 6 months and they're like, we gotta sell because
get out.
You know, so that's again where the due diligence for us comes in. It's just like, hey, like we're, like you said, we're not going to put you above what you can feel that you can do. Mm-hmm. I mean, within reason, right?
Yeah,
like, I mean, like there's
an ability to stretch, right? If you can see a timeline in which you can stretch it for 2 years and you're still okay, then that's a pretty safe place to be because we all know historically interest rates are going to shift over the course of 2 years. They're not going to stay the same. Yeah. I mean, we're talking a month ago, it was down like below 5, you know? Or sorry, not below 5. That would have been nice. Yeah. Below 6. Yeah. It went down that far, and now we're up above 7 within just a couple of months. That's how much it swings in a short amount of time. So the likelihood of them being able to dramatically shift their cost is really good. And especially when interest rates are high, then you know you're kind of at like, oh, there's the peak of the cycle. So I get to be the one buying up here and then watching it go, you know, and be the beneficiary at the bottom of the cycle, you know, versus trying to guess when the market's going to be the best. You can't guess.
You just can't guess.
You can't guess.
You can't.
Well, that was good. It was a good conversation. I feel like we nailed some things that would be appropriate for a lot of both buyers and sellers, in ways that we feel like buyers and sellers should be consulted. Yeah,
and at the end of the day, it's educate. It's educate and be there. Like you said, over communicate. Yeah. and we sit back and be the second best.
Second best.
Yeah. It's kinda-
Let's talk about some. I didn't want to say what it just came to my mind. Do you
I
realize
can
the
hear you
acronym we could have created for our appreciation investing and depreciation could have been AIDS?
yeah.
That's not a happy acronym. Or you could say like we're aiding people.
Yeah.
It's in way to aid, like first aid.
Yeah. It depends on where people's minds are at. I just don't know.
We'll just never
Yeah.
do an acronym.
We'll never do an acronym.
Since we're the second best,
Yeah.
we will X-nay all acronyms.
There's no other way. I mean, we could do, DIA. I mean,
Dia,
DIA.
Day.
Day.
seize the day.
Seize the day. Seize the day.
Seize the day!
I love it. Yeah, so appreciating, investing, depreciating.
Yeah. Let's jump
That's
into
where we're at.
appreciating. What are you doing this month? What are you appreciating right now?
What am I appreciating right now? I think that, I can't remember if this was mine last week, but just really appreciating pregnancy with my wife. I mean, like, just being alongside her on this journey of like, wow, like I get to see her like go through the growing pains and just the excitement, the nervousness, the doctor's appointments. Like it's just a whole new chapter of life for me. And I think it's like, I'm appreciating it and it's getting me more excited. I think as when you're the guy and you're not holding the baby, it's like, it's so hard to feel the connection, but it's like, when you get to experience it by going to doctor's appointments, get to feel the baby kick, like all of these things, it's like, wow, okay, like now I'm starting to grow a little bit more of attachment to like, hey, baby's coming, it's right around the corner in February here. And so yeah, I'm just really appreciating that, getting excited for it.
I give you full permission to say that every week
Yeah.
until the baby's here.
That'll be my appreciating every week, probably.
I give
Yeah.
you full permission.
Yeah.
It is a wild ride
Yeah.
to become a dad.
Yeah.
Like it really is. And you do feel very different than the mom does, who is like chemically wired to like
Yeah.
love and be, engaged with this whole process emotionally, everything. And we are kind of on the sidelines having to like catch up.
Yeah.
But it's so good to just observe and be there through the whole process. And yeah, I'm so excited for you
Yeah.
to get to experience all
Thanks.
this. It's good.
Yeah.
It's
I'm
good.
pumped about it. But what about you?
Well, my appreciating has to be on a political spectrum because
Okay,
here we
go.
are,
Yeah.
election day.
Yep, election day.
And the thing I am appreciating most right now is really civil conversations about politics.
Yeah.
I've had so many good conversations with people that I know are wise, that are smart. They may not agree with me, and that's okay. But we have these like friendly, loving conversations that don't make the election out to be something bigger than it actually is. We value the connection, the relationship, the care for each other more than we do the political party that we're
That's awesome.
going for.
Yeah.
And I love those conversations. I'm getting so much enrichment from those right now because I get to step outside of like the tension that exists in our world right now.
Yeah.
I drove by a sign this morning on the way out of or not out of our neighborhood, but on one of the roads that's adjacent to our neighborhood. And there was a sign that somebody had posted right in front of one of the other candidates' sign. But it wasn't like one of the signs that like is printed out. It was like a sign they actually made themselves. And they stuck it in the ground, wrote the candidate's name, and then said, "They stole my other sign." I thought it was the best.
Yeah.
It just described the enmity and just the craziness and the
Seriously,
violence that's going on in everyone's hearts right now. That's just like, man, if my person doesn't win, then I'm gonna be so angry at these other people, or the world's gonna go to hell in a handbasket. And that's just like, that's not true. Like if we just come together and unify and realize like it's okay to have these different perspectives, but we're still people. We can still care about each other after this is all said and done. We're not all going to be touting that we're the best and you're the losers. And all. That's not how this works. Like we are all Americans. And we all want our society to improve. We all want it to be successful. We all want churches to have more freedom. We want people to have more freedom in their choices in lives. And so it's not a bad thing to just meet on those levels and understand everyone has their story.
Yeah.
This is something I keep hearing. Like everybody has their story. Don't judge them just because they're not on your side.
Yeah.
So civil conversations.
I love that.
That's where I'm at.
That's huge. Those are
Yeah.
That's a big thing, especially around politics. I mean, it can be very dividing. So
It is.
I'm
What
glad
do we
that-
do next? We need to switch up the order so it's not AIDS.
depreciating.
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 ADI.
ADI. Addy.
That's what we're going for.
Yeah. What am I depreciating? I am depreciating. Again, I think I've used this one before. But it's kind of cars. I mean, just like cars.
Not the cars.
Cars are depreciating, but cars. First of all, I'm very thankful, and this can go to appreciation. One of my buddies is lending me his car for a couple weeks.
That's awesome.
And just because he doesn't use it, he's a nurse, and so he'll have the shifts where he's got some time in between, and so it's very, very gracious that he's letting me and my wife borrow the car for a couple weeks here. While we just try to figure out what to do, how to spend that money, and can we had been with one car for a while before, for about probably 6 months, and it's just difficult with one car. Like, it can be done. Like, it's again, this is a first world problem. Like, we can get it done and it's fine. But there's just when you're used to 2 cars and you take one away, it's like you're just like, man, like,
yes,
things change. Everything changes, and you got to figure out how to have, get to these places and make sure that it's almost like a work on not feeling so selfish, because I'm like, well, I've got all these things to do, but now my wife has all these things to do too.
Yes.
And we got to figure out how to work together and do that. So grateful that my friend's using our car, or is lending his car for us to use. But just depreciating cars in general, I think it's just like they're so frustrating to me. And speaking of that, his wife had just gotten in a fender bender car accident. And so it's just like they're dealing with car stuff. And it's like,
yeah, it cascades.
Yeah.
I feel like every time I talk about a car issue myself, I bump into someone else who's having multiple car issues too. So it's just like, this is the world we live in. Like, cars will fall apart.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. Wait, okay. Actually, something just popped into my mind I got to say for depreciating real fast.
Do it.
You ever play backgammon, the game?
No.
Okay, well,
Is it a big game?
It's like where you use like the little circular. It's like, I don't even know how to explain it.
I've seen it. It's got like the triangles, right?
Yep.
And then, okay.
Yep.
I know what it looks like, but I have no idea how to play it.
So my wife and I play it all the time, and full disclosure, she is better than me. She is by far better player than me.
She's the
but
you're competitive.
I'm competitive, and here's my depreciating. It frustrates me so much losing by luck. And there's gonna be people that argue and say like, well, you have to put yourself in a position like to not whatever. It's like, okay,
you didn't do the strategy early enough in order to make the luck.
And I get that, but at the same time, like, there's a point in the game where it's like there's no way either can capture, and it's like you're just rolling to get high rolls to get the guys off or get the little pieces off, and it just seems like every time she gets these rolls that are so much higher, she gets doubles that
she
like
gets the right
adds up.
ones.
And it's like, and I'm using just like every time is an exaggeration, but it's like every time that I don't win, it's happening. But it is the most blood boiling thing. Like I don't get mad at many like sports things, like because it's like, okay, that person just beat me because they beat me. They're better than me. They're more skilled. But it's like when it's a roll, there's like this like tension that I'm like, I should have won this game, but like you rolled a different.
You need to work on that stuff. You need to work on that.
Yeah.
When she just had the baby, she needs to win at everything. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and tell you that right now.
I know.
Just let her win.
Anyway, I did too depreciating there. But,
that's good. That's okay. That's funny. That's
what about you? What are you depreciating?
Oh, mine's simple. Non-civil political conversation.
Nice. There you go. Yeah, easy, back and forth.
Hey, yeah. I mean, it's people don't know how to separate their political affiliation from the relationship that they should value more, and they jump into convincing mode. They jump into like argument mode. And with no respect for the stories of the people that are behind those decisions and behind those things that make them go the way they go. And they're not disrespecting them. It's just people feel like they have to disrespect you to convince you to do something. And that is my biggest depreciating right now, for sure. But, I've tried to avoid political conversations as much as I can because I'm afraid of those types of conversations, right? I'm okay to have a friendly conversation and just be like, okay, what do you think? Well, yeah, let me tell you what I've heard and what I think. And it's amazing the truth that comes out through those like conversations. Yeah. And that you realize like, oh, these people actually do value what I value, just maybe from a different perspective. Right. And I value a lot of what they value, but from a different perspective. And so, but man, when people get angry about it and where they just, all over social media saying like, this is the way you should think. Stop thinking any other way. It's
Yeah.
like, you can't control the way that person thinks. Like they've got all these experiences and all these stories that culminate to where they're at and why they think certain candidates make more sense. So let them have their perspective. That's okay,
Yeah,
So,
that's good.
yeah,
Yeah.
that's where I'm at. What about investing?
This is a good one. I've been thinking about this a lot. I am going to run a marathon.
Oh,
And-
that's sick. Wait, like full.
Sorry.
Ooh.
Not as good as a full.
I
Half
was like,
marathon.
whoa.
Sorry. Maybe eventually.
You get to the half, then I
Yeah.
feel like it's the bug that gets you to the full, right?
Well, the furthest I've ever ran in my life was, I think, 11 miles once. Like, and nothing's ever even came close to that. Maybe like 6 or 7 miles before that. But then one day I was like, I'm just gonna try to go as far as I can, and I did. This was probably 4 years ago. But I was trying to think of multiple things, like of ways. Some of my brother-in-laws, they love to run. They're really good runners, and it's like, okay, some ways that I can kind of relate to them. But at the same time, like, also make sure I'm really into fitness. So I love working out, love resistance training, but making sure that my cardio and my heart health is also there as well.
Yeah.
And then just having a goal. I think like I've been just kind of going through the days, going through the motions without really a goal in mind of like, I want to achieve this thing. And I think
that's good.
when you get out of sports and when you get out of like, I'm trying to make my body good for this sport, it's like, well, now I'm not like, I need to be aesthetically pleased. Like, I need to be just like ripped and shredded. It's like, there's no like goal in that. I mean, to me, there's no goal in that.
It's an empty goal. It's like, it doesn't really get you too far.
Yeah, it's like, what happened? Like, I think it's really cool to like be like, all right, I'm gonna try to do something I've never done, try to push the boundaries, and so that's why today I'm actually gonna get some running shoes. Gonna go to the running store and get some running shoes, and I'm gonna try to document it too, like along the way, and just do like little Instagram reels and stuff. Just like, this is my journey.
That's good. You'll get so much encouragement that way too.
Yeah.
I find that when you like put yourself out there and just say like, hey, I've got a goal and I really want to achieve it, like back me up. People really do rise to the occasion. They're like, go for it, man. Like, do it. LP Run Club? Are you gonna wake up?
Well, so that's the thing.
We have a run club.
I know, that's where
at Lovett Properties.
the depreciation comes into play.
No.
With the car. With the car.
With the car. Okay.
So now that we have 2 cars, maybe I'll be able to do it. But like with 1 car, I wasn't able to go to the run clubs. So I made up a lot of excuses to never go to a single run club that we've done. But yeah, what is it? Every last Thursday of the month.
Last Thursday of the month.
At 6:30.
LP Run Club. You don't have to be a good runner to come.
No.
Do I come? No. I have 3 kids. That's my excuse.
But I've never went either. So, but yeah, that's what I'm investing in. So I'm excited. I actually am really excited for that.
That's good.
Yeah. What about you? What are you investing in?
Well, mine this week has been just surrounding myself with really positive voices that I trust, voices that have like grounded perspectives, that have kind of a proven track record. And I do that via podcasts, right? I mean, you're watching our podcast or listening to our podcast, then you're probably a bit of a podcaster. Like, you want to get in and hear people's perspectives. You want to learn from their perspectives. And I've been like trying to branch out and find some other trusted voices this week that just have balanced perspectives. They have perspectives that don't like, polarize. They don't. They're looking to unify. They're looking to help people see truth amidst like all of this tension and hostility. That's not just political. I mean, it can be religious too, or it can be just like day to day, like things that people struggle with on a regular basis. It's like having voices like those that actually care about digging into the stories of people. They care about finding truth at a deep level, and then learning from those, so that I'm better educated and not so inflammatory or like, just polarized or whatever. Like, I want to be able to see all the perspectives and make a really wise decision about it. So I use podcasts and really smart, wise people to do that. Yeah. So that's what I'm investing in right now.
That's cool.
Keep learning, keep listening.
Yeah. I'll have to ask you next week, what are some good ones?
I got some great recommendations.
Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Well,
that's a wrap. That's a wrap. Thanks for joining us, everybody, this week. We'll hit you with another episode next week, hopefully, and keep talking about all things Second Best Realtors.
Second Best Realtors. See you guys later.
Bye, y'all. Have a good week.